paranormal is all around us. You just have to recognize it. My name is Jeffrey Price. I'm one of the lead investigators with Michiana Paranormal Investigations. I have been a police officer in northern Indiana since 2007. In 2012, myself and one of our former police dispatchers, Liz Brownbridge, discovered that we had one common interest, and that was the paranormal. We decided to form a local paranormal group in north central Indiana that could help clients that were reporting claims of paranormal activity. Since 2012, our group has grown to over 15 members and includes senior investigators, historians, investigators with various experience, psychics, and video and audio technicians. Since we started, our team has traveled around the area in search of some of the most haunted locations with the same goal in mind on every investigation: helping people. In 2015, our team started conducting paranormal workshops and presentations, teaching the community on how to use and understand equipment and various techniques. Join us every week as we showcase some of our investigations, demonstrate equipment, talk with experts in the field of paranormal science, and go on location to show you some unique and potentially paranormal hotspots. We are Michiana Paranormal Investigations, and this is Haunted Michiana.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Haunted Michiana with Michiana Paranormal Investigations. We're very happy that you've tuned in for another great episode. Today is actually an awesome episode. We're going to be talking about the history of Halloween. And with us today, we have some amazing members of our group here that are going to talk about various aspects of it. So right now, I'm going to turn it over to Misty, one of our paranormal investigators, that's going to tell you more about it. Misty?
Thank you, Jeff. Hello and welcome to today's episode of Haunted Michiana. I'm your host, Misty. I'm an investigator for Michiana Paranormal, and today I'm here with Stephen, Rachel, and Dustin. And today we're going to take you on a journey to discover what is believed to be the origins of Halloween, as well as how those beliefs have influenced traditions around the world. So here in America, thoughts of Halloween may make you think of having fun trick-or-treating costumes, bonfires, or candy apples. We'll talk about some of the heritage, the celebrations, and maybe give you a new perspective on this time-honored tradition. So I'd like to start with where it all is believed to have originated at, which was in Ireland. And Stephen, would you like to talk about that?
I would love to. Okay, what we think of as our modern holiday of Halloween can be traced back to a Celtic festival called Samhain. The Celts were a tribe of people that lived about 2,000 years ago in Ireland, parts of the UK, and northern France. Their New Year day was on November 1st. That day separated the summer months and the harvest from the winter months, and thoughts of those months were associated with death and so New Year's Day was November 1st. The day before, the last day of summer, was Samhain. And during that time they felt that the barrier between the world of the dead and the world of the living was at its thinnest. So all kinds of spirits could come across. Mischievous spirits, spirits of loved ones and family members and friends that have passed before could come across. And during these celebrations, they would light these huge bonfires and dress in costumes, and their priests, the druids, would offer sacrifices of crops and livestock in these fires. And during this time, it was also felt, because of all this spirit activity, they were able to, the druids would be able to foretell the future a little easier.
It's more about, is that where you think, like, the paganness, people think of holidays, or Halloween as a pagan holiday?
The Celts followed a pagan religion, and part of that was being able to foretell the future. You know, are we going to have a good harvest next year? Will we all survive the winter? You know, everything was based around nature and what could happen to you if the weather was bad or the weather was good.
Right. Well, in England, they also celebrate Halloween. They do it a little bit differently. Instead of trick-or-treating and pumpkins or jack-o'-lanterns, they actually use beets, which I brought a few. And instead of carving on the pumpkin, they carve on the beet. And then they would carry these through town, put them on fence posts, and that, instead of getting candy when they would go to houses, they'd ask for money. And that was kind of a payment of help protect our house while we're sleeping at night. And then they would also, whatever was left of the carvings and everything, they would also use pictures, anything around the house, and they would actually burn them in the bonfires, and in the morning they would come back. And depending on how it burned, if there's any remnants left or anything like that, they could foretell the future that way, supposedly. So it kind of relates into that.
Yeah, very
Well,
similar.
I think each culture has kind of adapted a little bit from that original practice of Halloween and how the Celts were
Yeah.
Right.
practicing. And they've kind of developed their own traditions from there.
Right.
So,
A lot of like interpreting signs and
Right.
it's how
Right.
things are. Yeah, that's.
Well, and it was, oh, let's get a message from our loved one, kind of.
Well, things were added to it. Things were added to that as well. I mean, the Romans ruled that part of the world for about 400 years. So there were Roman festivals that came in. One festival dealt with honoring the dead. Another festival was for the goddess Pomona. She's recognized and always associated with the apple. So it's believed that bobbing for apples came from that. And then it takes on its modern name because the follow the Roman Empire, the Catholic churches, and they appropriate local customs into it as well. And in the 7th century, they had a All Martyrs Day. In the 8th century, Pope Gregory III, I think, changed that to All Saints Day to include the saints, and he moved it from May to November 1st, November 2nd. And so that became All Hallows Day from Middle English. And so the evening before ended up being All Hallows Eve, and then we get the name Halloween from that.
When you were
And-
talking about the saints, I mean, that
Yeah.
has a lot to do with Day of the Dead too, and the
Yeah.
Mexican cultures, how they
Yeah,
have their saints
absolutely.
and celebrate just not that the person has died, but that the person, lived and give thanks and clean up the graves and,
Yeah.
kind of celebrate that they were on the planet and,
celebrating
Yeah.
their life.
right, celebrating their life and what all they did while they were here.
Which is actually closer to the way the Celts celebrated it. There was a mischievous and could be a scary aspect to it as well. There were evil spirits that came through as well, but they also had traditions where they left out treats or they set a place at the table for the ghosts of their loved ones to come through. They would light candles to guide them through until they could get back to their world. And so for them, it was more of a sacred time, more one on reflecting on their ancestors and people that they lost. Whereas now it's, what we have here in the U.S. is more commercial and
Right.
secular.
Well,
It's more fun, I think.
right.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was Japan where they light red lanterns and set them afloat down the rivers and in the ocean to show the spirits of their ancestors, hey, we're here if you want to visit. It was just kind of a
Right.
welcoming, for the deceased to come back and say hi.
Yeah, that's the Obon Festival.
Oh, is it? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a really cool festival
it?
in
Okay.
Japan. Yeah, and they believe that their loved ones will be guided by the lights down the river, and that the families will be able to have that time.
Yeah.
So, Stephen, I don't know if you mentioned this or not, but what is it about this particular time of year that made them believe that maybe the veil was thinner at this time for those spirits to cross over?
I think because psychologically they associated winter with death
Okay.
and dying. The earth is dying, the crops are dying, except for evergreen trees. All the trees look like they die, and a lot of them felt that everything's dying, and so you would hope that the weather would start to warm up. They didn't understand seasons as we do, the earth spinning and rotating on an axis and spinning around the sun. So since they were thinking about death anyway, it just became part of the culture that on this last day of the year before the new year, that veil was the thinnest.
Okay. Okay. Well, with that, I want to move into talking about the regions of Austria, the Czech Republic, and Slovakia. And I do want to just mention that all three of these countries, they have a very rich history in folklore, particularly in the Czech Republic, the folklore of vampires. So that is very interesting.
Twilight.
So in Austria,
type
I
of
think a lot of the Czechs moved from there to inland in the European region. And so a lot of those traditions carried over with that. Like Austria, they have the Kürbisfest. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's the pumpkin festival during the last week of October. They have pumpkins parties and a Halloween parade. It's also a tradition for them to, on Halloween night, they leave out bread, water, a lighted lamp on the table when they go to bed, and this is to welcome the souls of their deceased family members that evening. October 30th through November 8th is All Souls Week, and then November 2nd is considered All Souls Day, and that is a little more primarily a Catholics recognize that day as All Souls Day, and that's in honor of the saints and the martyrs. People visit the grave sites and decorate them with wreaths and lanterns, and they also pray for the deceased, and some of them will even hold small graveside masses for their family members. Then moving on to like in Czechoslovakia, which is now Czech Republic and Slovakia, they separated back in '93. November 2nd is called the commemoration of all of the departed. And so again, you have where they visit their grave sites, decorating with flowers, candles. They actually believe that their loved ones can hear their prayers. Costumes, trick-or-treating is also becoming very popular in this area, and I think part of that is to so many Americans that are over there now. A lot of the neighborhoods there have the trick-or-treating. And some of these festivities actually take place around the 23rd of October, so it starts a little earlier over there and carries on. Costume parties known as the Grand Masquerade of Evil Spirits. And again, this goes back to, I guess, a little more of the pagan rituals of dressing like witches, demons, evil spirits to kind of ward those spirits off. And then the Czechoslovakian traditions dictate that on Halloween night, Czechoslovakian families will arrange chairs around the fireplace, and they always put out enough chairs for the family members in the home, and also enough chairs for the deceased family member who they want to remember.
Oh, that's so nice. I remember my grandma used to do that for my great-grandma.
Yeah, now, you were a foreign exchange student, right?
Oh yeah, I studied in Japan for 2.5 weeks.
Did they have anything in Japan that was like Halloween, or?
Well, they do, yeah. I briefly mentioned the Obon Festival. So in Japanese culture, you'll see in every home they have an altar for their loved ones, and they'll either have the ashes or a picture, something that to remember their loved ones by. And during this particular festival, they will put out offerings for their loved ones, and usually it'll always have white rice. You're doing great. Because in Japanese culture, white rice is very cleansing, and so they believe that helps to cleanse the soul and to really, help them on the other sides. Yeah.
I just can't help but think, listening to all this, so many people have the belief that Halloween is for pagans or it originated in there, which it kind of did, but then so many other cultures embrace this as a time for celebrating their ancestors and their loved ones. And I mean, when you think about it, that's really a beautiful thing that they would take that time and set it aside to celebrate
Right.
the time that they were here and honor that tradition. So.
Well, I saw that in Germany. They don't celebrate Halloween as we do here or a lot of other European countries. But they do recognize that deceased ones can come visit during that time frame, and they hide all knives and sharp implements so that the spirits don't harm themselves when they come back accidentally, which I thought was kind of, neat that they don't want them harmed, but I don't know if they can harm a ghost or not. So I thought that was neat. And then you were also saying, all the different cultures and all the different areas that celebrate. But also, I also saw that places like Ukraine, Russia, Hungary, a lot of the Slavic things think that Halloween is too much of an American holiday to celebrate. And what we've seen here today is it didn't even start in America. It started with the Celts way back when, before, settlers were here. So I thought that was kind of interesting of how far it's come as far as
I think
holiday.
every culture that came here added a little something to it. And we had a huge influx in the middle of the 19th century with people fleeing England and Ireland because of the potato famine. So you had this huge influx of people that were following these old customs, and it just, like we do here in America, we just kind of appropriated what we liked and mixed it with everything else, and
Kind of a melting pot Halloween.
yeah, and that's
Yeah,
where you
exactly.
end up.
Take everything what we like.
And then the greeting card companies took over, and
Well, I know that the Japanese absolutely have a heyday with Halloween.
Do they really?
Yes, when they come over here, they can't believe that people would dress up in costumes and go door to door begging for candy. I mean, it's just something they just cannot wrap their mind around. So, of course, all the teenagers, during our foreign exchange programs, they have a total heyday with Halloween. They absolutely love it.
Well, and I think that's something in America. I mean, we do make it a fun holiday. We don't
Right.
necessarily focus on, honoring our ancestors and things like other countries do.
Right.
Specifically at that time, I mean, Americans do go visit their, loved ones at the cemetery or
It's
their
kind of-
gravesites, but to set aside that specific time
right.
to honor them.
Right. Halloween here is more commercialized and lost
Exactly.
its original meaning of connecting with those that have passed.
I mean, I would think Christmas would actually be a closer time of connecting to our past loved
That's
ones.
a
Like
good
I
point.
mentioned with my grandmother having my great-grandma's picture at the dinner table.
Right.
And that would always be her chair because she sat there when she
Yeah.
was around. So I don't know about your guys' families, but I know that was always a big deal in our home.
Yeah, usually around the holiday, Christmas and Thanksgiving. So I think we kind of, we have the fun Halloween holiday, and then we celebrate the true meaning, I think, more along closer to the actual
Thanksgiving,
Christmas, New
Yeah.
Year, yeah.
I agree.
Well, like we talked about, I think every culture has kind of adapted the portions that they like about those traditions. So how would you guys say that, what are some of the similarities, some of the differences that you're seeing after talking about all this? Stephen, I think you had some notes on.
Well, I think the big differences are, in ancient times it was more of a sacred religious festival with a lot of spiritual meaning, and it was a huge, important time of the year for the entire community. Whereas now, it's so secular, and it's seen, I think, mostly for the adults might get together for a dress-up party or something, but it's mostly for the kids. You rush to get home so you can take the kids trick-or-treating, and that's Halloween. So that's a big difference. But a lot of the similarities are the same. I mean, there is the idea of spirits coming and being a part of it, and needing to ward them off. Apples have been associated with this time. The Celts, the Romans, everybody since then has associated apples because that was part of the fall harvest. So you have a lot of similarities that way. Trick-or-treating as we have it today is similar in that it's modified from the practice of in different parts of the world. In Ireland, it was more going door to door asking for food. In England, I think you said it was
Money.
asking for money.
I like that idea.
So do I.
We should bring that into our culture.
And over the years, that became a thing where the poor would ask for food and money from people, and they would take that in exchange. They promised to go to church and pray for the spirits of the people that had given them money and given them food, given them little gifts. And then that evolves into trick-or-treating. And a lot of people, it's the fall. A lot of people still like bonfires at night. It's not as hot. You can burn all your leaves and everything like that. This, all these traditions that people normally do can get traced back to 2,000 years ago in pagan Ireland.
So it sounds like trick-or-treating almost started as somewhat of a bribe.
It does. Yeah. Just we'll give you money if you protect us.
Well,
Right.
it is
Yeah.
different to all
Right.
of our other holidays.
It is.
I mean, if you look at all of them, there's, themes of family or honoring, past instances, and then it's like, oh, give us candy. It's like, whoa, where did that come
Right.
from? I mean, no one really knows,
Yep.
Very interesting. Anything else to add?
Hopefully this doesn't run over. The idea of jack-o'-lanterns comes from, or they believe it comes from, a story, folktale of an Irishman named Irish Jack. And he was stingy, and he was selfish, and he was drunk most of the time. And the story goes that he happened one night to come across the devil. And he tricked the devil into climbing up an apple tree to pick this one last apple that's at the top. And while the devil is up in the tree, Jack carves a cross in the trunk of the tree. And now the devil can't get down. So Jack wouldn't mark out the cross and let the devil come down until he swore that he would never come after Jack's soul. So the story then goes that after many more years, Jack dies. Well, he gets to heaven. They won't take him in heaven because he had been stingy, he had been selfish, he had been lived a life of drunkenness his whole life, so he couldn't come into heaven. So he then travels to hell, but the devil says, nope, I swore an oath that I wouldn't take your soul, so he can't do that. So now he's doomed to walk the earth. And as he was leaving hell, it was dark, so he looked for a different story, say a gourd or a squash or a pumpkin, and he carved a lantern out of that, and the devil picked up a piece of coal and threw it at him out of frustration, and he put that in there, and that became his lantern. And now we carve pumpkins and put candles in there because,
Well, I wonder if that's how
that's
the beats in England came along, the punkies,
right.
carrying them through town, trying to scare them away, and just
Yeah.
instead of pumpkins, maybe they don't have pumpkins in England as much.
Yeah. Got to use what you got.
Exactly. Now, what were you saying about Rome and the holidays?
Well, Rome incorporated two of their holidays. One, like I said, was a feast day for the goddess Pomona. The other one was called Feralia.
Oh.
And that was a day set aside to honor all your dead ancestors.
Oh,
So
okay.
every culture, it's odd in what could be considered Western cultures. It's all been toward the fall, not quite winter, but during the time of the year when everything's dying. So they associate not ancestor worship so much, but the idea of honoring your ancestors at this time, and it just all got kind of mashed together into one. I know you said in Japan they do it in the summer.
They
summer
do,
months,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's August, actually, the
August.
Obon Festival.
Okay.
Yeah.
And kind of late summer.
Yeah, it
A
is.
little bit.
And I think it was Korea as well. I can't remember the name of the festival. Do you happen to?
The
The Festival of the Hungry Ghosts. And they think that if a spirit is still here, they're probably hungry. And they put offerings of food out so that they're happier with everything and move on. So I thought that was kind of neat, as well as, trying to make your ancestors happy, to recognize that they're here and just try to, get them to go. Be happy on the other side.
Keep going.
No,
Move
but
on.
be happy on the other side and move on.
Or like when I was talking about in Austria, how they were leaving the bread and water next to their, nightstand for their deceased relatives, and it was more of an offering to them to welcome them back from the other side.
Right.
So, and then Czechoslovakia, I think we talked a little bit about how they would leave the chairs around the fireplace, and in hopes that maybe as they crossed over that they would stop and visit with
Now,
them.
you had said something before about Buddha and...
Oh, yeah. So in the Obon Festival, it comes from Buddhist origin. And the way that it came to be was there was a follower under Buddha named Maha. and he claims that he had a vision of his deceased mother. Okay, and he went to the Buddha because he was so, freaked out by this. He was like, oh my God, I saw my mom and I feel like she's actually trapped. Like he felt like her soul had not found peace, and that was why he was seeing her. And the Buddha suggested to her that he give an offering to his mother, and that would allow her soul to go on. And so that was how the Obon Festival got offerings, like of food to the ancestors. But it was more than just having them come for a visit. It was actually having her soul be able to find peace. So it was kind of a different take on that.
That's very fascinating. And I hope our viewers today are going to take what we've talked about and just maybe look at Halloween in a whole new perspective, and maybe just stop and take a moment and celebrate their own family heritage and their ancestors, and to set aside some time to maybe do that, maybe some decorating at their gravesides, or just stopping and remembering those loved ones who have gone on. So thank you guys very much for your input today. This has been a great discussion. And Stephen, did you have anything else to add today? Or
I would just like to thank our viewers for watching our show. Please check us out on the web. We are MichianaParanormal.com. You can find us on YouTube and watch this and many other episodes at Mishawaka Paranormal. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Thank you. And Instagram. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we got everything.